Welcome to the SBCA podcast, Component Connection, where we explore the people, ideas, trends, and innovations shaping the structural framing industry. Regardless of how you touch this industry, we're glad you're here. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, this is Ashley Baker, the Director of Education for SBCA, and I'll be your host for this episode of Component Connection. I'm joined by Adam Finkenhoefer with 84 Lumber, and we are going to talk a little bit about BCMC and some of our education sessions, all that just wrapped, of course. We're so excited. We had a great year, great show, and we are here to shed a little bit of light on the show in general, and of course, what we're going to do with education looking ahead as we wrap 2025 and into 2026. So welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, for those of you who may not know you, you are our new Education Committee Chair. We're very excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing at 84 Lumber.
Yeah, so I am currently the area manager for the Southeast for 84 Lumber. I cover Georgia and Tennessee for the component plants based out of the Atlanta market.
Awesome. And how long have you been with 84?
I've been with 84 going on 7 years now.
That's really exciting. And
Yes.
you may or may not be an Alabama fan, right? Roll Tide.
I am. I have a degree from the University of Alabama, so I certainly love that aspect, especially this time of year.
So fun. So fun. Well, awesome. Thank you for joining us. Let's chat a little bit about BCMC. So tell me what you thought about the show this year.
Yeah, I thought the show this year was very well attended comparative to what the market is showing right now. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of value that was brought to this year's show, especially having the education sessions kind of split up from the showroom floor. And just from a visual standpoint, I thought there was more activity on the showroom floor the first day than we've seen really in any of the most recent years. So I felt like it was a good turnout for everybody. I feel like there was some value that was learned. And I believe the education sessions were very well attended this year. So hopefully everybody got just as much out of those sessions as I did.
Yeah, I agree. I think the shift to most of our education being on Tuesdays, that was a huge help. And of course, we've got a couple, sprinkled in throughout the lunch hour. But I imagine that that's something that we'll do going forward again as well. This is obviously the first year that we tried that. But, great attendance. I think people really came in specifically for the education on Tuesday. And that was a big hit.
Absolutely.
Well, let's shift our gears a little bit and talk about education in the remaining months of 2025 and going into 2026. You and made a comment, and of course, as our new Education Committee Chair, leading that recent meeting we had about sort of shifting the way that we approach education. And I think that that's something that, given the market and whatnot, that is really critical right now. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So when we talk, education, we're looking at our industry. Why do you think that right now is the right time to refocus education around what's important to the end user, to the builder, to the homeowner?
I think right now it's really important to kind of change course a little bit on the education side. From the standpoint of, I think that we do a phenomenal job inside of our industry of educating each other, the strengths, weaknesses of the market, the internal challenges that everybody struggles with, learning the new technologies that are out there that everybody wants to learn and adapt to. But to me, that stuff really, it only makes so much sense to one side of the equation. We need to have a better understanding of what value our customers perceive from components. What do they truly find important? How do we incorporate new technologies and AI to match end user needs? How do we incorporate our education sessions to better serve our customers, whether that's CRM systems or being able to stay organized for our customers and showing them the value of organization, whether it's using technology to build a better product, what ultimately, where should we be putting our resources to better serve our customers? 'Cause whether it's a tight market or a wide open market, ultimately those customers are the ones buying our products. So we need to have a better understanding of what is important. We're also coming into a time where there's a new generation of homeowners coming in. You have a lot of millennials and Gen Zers that are starting to look at purchasing homes, and what is important to them could be completely different than what was important to the previous generation. So we need to make sure we're keeping up with the end user times as well as the current modern technologies and methodologies that we perceive as being important.
That's such a great point. Everybody's priorities and such are different, right? From generation to generation, very similar to, if you look at it on a basic level, just the layout of a house, right? You had open concept that was so popular for so long. And, that trend is sort of sailing or, shifted a bit. And I imagine that that's pretty similar to what we see with kind of the big picture as a whole, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, it also goes into, what's important to them as far as energy codes. You need to be able to educate our end users as well on, what is an energy code? Why is it important to a home where it can help save them educate them just as much as they can educate us? Ceiling conditions, is that as important to the newer generation as it is to the generations that were purchasing homes the last 10, 15, 20 years? What's that sweet spot for the new generation?
Yeah. How do you think we get to that point? Do you think obviously we start with education at, OQMs, BCMC. Do you have any thoughts on what we bring in, how we make that happen?
I think we need to try and reach out more so to the end users and try and get them on some panels, whether that is somebody from a local home builders association, from the National Home Builders Association, even on, from a banker's side, and what are they seeing as the importance as they're trying to write some of these mortgages of home size, what's important. I think we just need to do a little bit better job, and we will do a better job of bringing in some more panels of outside opinions that are not manufacturers, people who are actually purchasing the product.
That's a great point. And you had mentioned that, previously. I think it's bringing in some of these individuals who, have the insight that we're not necessarily privy to is really key. I want to go back to something that you said too, early on, when it comes to the economy, and people have shifted how they buy, how they build, how they prioritize projects. How do you feel like that impacts the kind of education that our members need right now?
I think our members would benefit from having that information, because it helps them tailor their business to be more successful and more profitable. As an industry, we're only as strong as the weakest link. And I think bringing in that education level, we can strengthen our industry as a whole.
Yeah, it's an opportunity really for our CMs to better position themselves in a lot of the conversations that happen around budgets. I think you've seen like longer decision cycles, buyer expectations. So it gives them a leg up when it comes to having those types of conversations, for sure.
Absolutely.
Can you think of, or maybe share an example or something, that you would like to see happen or that does happen when it comes to knowing what's important, again, to the end user and how that changes the way we design? We'll go with that. Can you share an example of, how knowing what's important to them might change the outcome?
Absolutely. When we're, as an industry, designing for for a home. We are designing based on our knowledge and expertise of what value components can bring to a home. Sometimes that might add a few extra dollars. Sometimes it might take out a couple of bucks. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're supplying the end user the product that they want that's important to their customer. Knowing, how they plan on doing their installation, what they want for HVAC standards, what they want for their MEPs. Just knowing that information can really help us value engineer a home.
It's a great point. It really does, mentioned before, like give you a leg up, right? But it improves the collaboration. At one point there were conversations that were had as part of one of the education sessions at BCMC this year. And I believe it was done in the CRM session that you guys did too. It really becomes, you have an opportunity to partner with the end user, right? Or the builder, the customer, whoever it is, you're partnering with them, and that develops an entirely different relationship and then makes you as the CM even more valuable, right? You're offering something far more than just a truss or wall panel. How do you...
A lot of these end users right now, they are looking for a partner and not just a vendor. It's all about how do we manage their expectations along with our production capabilities, with our design capabilities, and the more level of detail that we can provide to them based on what their needs are, the better we can serve our industry.
It's a great point. So how do you see the shift then in education focusing, on improving collaboration between the CM and, builder or ultimately the homeowner? How do you see that collaboration improving kind of the cycle as a whole?
Really, the cycle as a whole, it can speed up that cycle. It can speed up quote times. It can speed up production times. It can speed up the overall build time of the product. If we're not having to play the back and forth game of this is what, John Doe wants in a house, it gives us the ability to help them speed up their cycle times. It gives us the ability to help work and partner with them to decrease the cost of what they're doing. And being that overall partner is, in my opinion, what's going to help our industry moving forward. The other thing too is we're also reaching a new generation of purchasing managers. They may not necessarily have a lot of field experience of actually building a house. So the more that we can educate them based on what they're telling us, the stronger we can be as well. Because a lot of these new purchasing managers may not know exactly about energy codes or being able to create some sort of storage space or the codes that are required in HVAC platforms or closets. So I think we also need to focus on educating the end user as well, because we are coming into a new day and age of generations purchasing the homes and also the ones that are purchasing for the home builders.
How do you think we get there? How do you think we do that part, educating the end user?
I think that SBCA over the next year or two, we should really focus on putting together education programs that we can offer up to our customers that give them a more or less a crash course on the importance of components, the values it can bring, why certain things get done a certain way, and then they can, in turn, educate us as to why they have been following certain purchasing trends or whatever that may be. But I think us putting together an education program for our end users is just as important as educating ourselves as an industry.
Such an important concept. I think it's so often overlooked, right? We get so focused on educating, within our industry, but there's this, entire group, those that we're serving, right, that maybe don't necessarily have the insight or the education, and that can often get, or maybe falls by the wayside because it's something that doesn't necessarily seem as important. But I know it's been a big focus for you guys, at 84. It's been a focus for us, right, at SBCA and developing some of that. So continuing on that trend. I know you had shared at one point, Adam, that some of the education that we created, you had shared with some, staff at 84 who weren't necessarily, involved in the design, the purchasing, the whatnot, who were maybe just taking a call when somebody comes in and the value that they provided them. So sharing that same type of education with the customer who then has a better understanding of what the process looks like. And in turn, it makes your job easier too, right? Because you don't necessarily have to maybe, not that you don't want to have some of these conversations, but it at the end of the day, it makes that an easier conversation, right? Hey, we've got this that I can share with you that you can kind of tap into and watch and learn from. And then some of those conversations that you guys have on the back end become a little bit easier as well.
Absolutely. And there's just for example, there's an abundance of, videos. I'll take YouTube for example. If somebody wanted to learn how to change their own oil in their car or to build a shed or to, whatever that may be. And those education tools out there are very minimal for what we do. So there's not a, in my opinion, there's not a central point where some of these purchasing managers or even end users can go to see, exactly what they're purchasing. They just see a large product being delivered to their house and being installed, but there's really not a good education platform out there. What we do and why we do it.
You hit the nail on the head. And when you think about it, it's crazier when it comes to what they're buying, right? They're buying a, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800,000 home that they could live in for the rest of their life and don't even necessarily know. Education sessions obviously help create more alignment between manufacturers, the end user, but there's sort of those in the middle as well, the framer, the builder, you could consider, of course, as end user as well, but they're involved. How does that strengthen those relationships and, ultimately the entire process, of constructing this home?
It helps educate them on how to better, I'll give an example, handle our products. Yeah. Trusses they're not pick them up, carry them up the stairs and nail them up to the ceiling. You have to use a crane, you have to use a spreader bar. You have to do things a certain way, which there's it makes job sites safer. The more we can educate and align with them. And two, it can, again, speed up the build time. The more we can align with our customers.
Time is precious, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, obviously the goal is to make sure we hit the nail on the head, right? We want to meet the mark. Our education is really something that can help CMs, of course, but it's going to help CMs even more so if we reframe how we do this and really focus on, as we've said, the end user, the customer, the builder. What kind of impact do you hope to see across the industry in the next few years? And I know that's a broad goal, right? That our education is impacting the industry as a whole, but that is the goal, right? If we do this right, what impact do you think this has?
Yeah, and honestly, I think the impact is an abundance of whatever we want it to be. Educating ourselves on what the end user wants will, again, I said it earlier, will strengthen us as an industry, and it will allow ultimately it'll allow our end users to better sell their product. They will have a better understanding of what they're buying, how to build their houses, or the way that they want to build their houses. And my goal is to make it a healthier industry across the board. Make sure that our customers understand what they're purchasing. And I think it's going to make everybody stronger. It's going to help framers with the technologies that are out there. It's going to help CMs with the ability to produced were as important to the end users, which ultimately just leads to a healthier home builders industry at the end of the day.
Well, Adam, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ashley.
Of course. And thank you all out there for listening to SBCA's podcast, Component Connection. If you've enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please like it and share it with others. Stay up to date and in the know by subscribing to Component Connection on whatever podcast platform you use most.
Thanks for listening to Component Connection, brought to you by SBCA. If there's a topic you'd like us to explore in a future episode, email us at podcast@sbcacomponents.com.